you have to trust your instinct when you feel that, oh, there is something that people are thinking but not actually saying.
How do you manage both your kids' life and a successful career?
Travel with kids is very much a muscle where if you haven't done it, it's daunting and it becomes more daunting over time.
The only tip I have for you is travel with your children. Don't save it up for some other time down the road because it's never going to get easier.
America's new royal couple, Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. This is a controversial topic. If you know the NBA thing was controversial, just wait until we get this.
No, we should not even go there. That is not a pivot for this show that is going to go well.
And we are back. Oh, I love this.
We are?
Yes.
Solo episodes.
Solo episodes. That's right. Solo episodes for the win. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Aarthi and Sriram show. And it has been quite the week, and we have quite the episode planned for you this week. I don't know, Aarthi, how excited are you for this week?
This week, I'm really excited. We are in London, and we just been watching
Land
a
of
bunch
James
of stuff
Bond
that's
and Harry
happened.
Potter.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to talk about last week when we put out the solo episode. One, the reaction just blew us away. Yeah, I think we got 40, 50 comments on just the YouTube video, but then lots of emails reaching out, lots of LinkedIn requests, lots of just, thank you for just people reaching out, especially folks who live in London, founders who live here, saying hi, helping us get settled in, just really appreciate it. Particularly, I think the comments on the snippet on MBA and whether you should get an MBA or not, I think it really touched a nerve. Yes. I think it just evoked a lot of emotions. What do you think, Sriram?
I'm just happy that people with MBAs are not prone to violence, because otherwise then we might need to figure out whether the UK has a witness protection program. No, first of all, thank you everyone who left a comment and sent us love and hate and everything in between. We appreciate this. If you'd be so kind, also leave a review when you're leaving the comment. It also helps us. But
yeah,
I think the MBA episode kind of struck a note on a few levels, because I think at the heart of it, setting aside our opinion on it, it kind of goes to people's sense of identity and the choices they made. Because a lot of people were like, hey, I chose not to have a B school path, like the two of us. Some others were like, I chose to have a B school path. And so when you kind of open in one of these things, it kind of attacks a sense of identity. So that's one.
Yeah, I think so. And to be clear, we've talked about it only in the context of technology, especially around being a founder. It's not so much that we don't like people who have MBAs. That's not what we're saying. I think for us, for our personal careers and paths that we chose, it just didn't make sense in retrospect. And very clear about the retrospect part, because all my life I'd been thinking whether I should have just done it. And now A, it's too late. B, I think I'm better off without it. And so for the path that I chose, I think it's, which is being a founder, working in technology, which is kind of the only thing that we are good at. I think, I don't know if an MBA was worth it.
I think we also got some interesting comments from people who pointed out that there are multiple CEOs in technology who maybe not be founders, but who actually had a kind of a classic B school McKinsey / consultant path. So that was great. But I think the bigger takeaway was, we loved all the comments and thoughts, and we also came away with we should do more of these where we go tackle people's questions. Now, we have a bunch to go through this week, and send us your thoughts and comments. But what do we have next on the docket today?
I saw your tweet, Sriram, and I wanted to talk about it, right?
Oh my goodness. When somebody opens a conversation with the line, I saw your tweet and I want to talk to you about it, it's usually
No, I think you tweeted yesterday, and I've been loving these long form tweets of yours, which are part career advice, part just reflections on, what you've been through. I like it a lot. I think one that you did yesterday was, I think it was called Saying the Unsaid. It touched a nerve, and a lot of people also just reposted, replied, and shared their own experiences and stuff. So talk to me about it, and why did you write this piece, and what was this whole incident? Talk to us about it.
Sure. So the background behind this is I've been trying to get myself out of a writing rut, and the way I've been trying to do it is, instead of writing these very long, thought pieces, I've been trying to write little one-off pieces of advice or anecdotes that I had in my life, kind of tied to, turning a bit older a few weeks ago. And this particular piece was called Saying the Unsaid. And the basic idea behind this is that, one of the pieces of advice that I think I give to people, right? Or one of the things where, as I got a bit older, I would reflect back on things that have gone well for me and what was I doing right, was when you're in a situation, and there's usually a work situation, but maybe not a work situation. It could be a one-on-one, it could be a group. And you will sometimes have a feeling, right? You will sometimes have a feeling that there is a proverbial elephant in the room, right? There is a proverbial, like, a thing that everyone is thinking about but not talking about, right? And this can happen many. Let's take maybe a simple example of this. So let us say you are, this happened to me. You're someone young in your career, your fears, and you're doing like a big group meeting. And I was in this big exec review with a bunch of people. This is for folks, maybe not familiar. Like, you get like a really senior executive, and I was at the time like a year or two out of college. So I was like a nobody. And you would usually be part of this team, which was, be presenting your plans for the year or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, this exec, as Microsoft had a little bit of a reputation, for kind of, not being the most pleasant person to deal with at times, right? And we'll get back to the reputation a little bit. And at one time, he was talking about something that he wanted the team to do, which was kind of very different from our original plans. And I'm kind of keeping this a little vague because I don't want people to go play detective on who I'm talking about, which is one of the problem in previous stories I said. And I swear, like, I had this feeling, and I was very young, so I wasn't sure of myself. But I was like, this feels weird. There's no way that we can actually do this thing. This is outlandish. This is so different from our capabilities, the resources we have, the timeline we have. Like, this is just total craziness, right? But no one was saying so. And usually, a lot of people may ask, like, okay, why was I speaking up? For a bunch of reasons. I don't want to look like an idiot, right? Like, I was super young. I was like, what do I know? Like, there are people who are more senior than me in the meeting. They are not speaking up, right? I didn't want to speak up and be wrong. And everyone looks at me and goes like, oh, that's not what we were thinking at all. We can totally do this. I didn't want this executive to get mad at me because I was questioning somebody in a position of authority. So there's a few things kind of to, tangle up in there. But I think a lot of people can relate to this feeling where I was like, this feels weird, but okay, no one's saying so. And then this person next to me, who was kind of a friend of mine, and he could have been much older than me. At the time, he feels older, but he was like in his mid-20s, and he was probably a bit early in his career too. He was definitely not anywhere near the most senior person in the room. He speaks up, and he kind of starts a bit, and he says, I just, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm the only one here, but this feels like, way outside of our comfort zone. Like, we can't actually do this for a bunch of reasons. And there's this pause in the room. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, he's really stepped into it now. But this exec, he goes and says, oh my goodness, I so wish many others said this to me. There's so many teams, in your division who never push back. And then when push comes to shove, they don't ship the thing on time. I'm so happy you actually push back and said no, right? Now, the reason for this story is that, this pattern of use, and what I remember feeling from that moment is I was like, kind of, one, admiration at my colleague. I was like, oh my goodness, he had sort of the courage to say that. I was also ashamed because I felt like, why didn't I say this? Because I felt the same thing, and he was doing the exact same thing I did. And I could have basked in the glory of the moment, right? Like, of the adulation. And I think I sort of learned from that a little bit, but also it was really a muscle that I trained over time, where when you're in any situation, and where, especially I think group meetings, you have to trust your instinct when you feel that, oh, there is something that people are thinking, but not actually saying. Now, a lot of people, have many reasons for saying this, thinking this, right? First is they go, okay, what if I say this and I'm wrong? Okay. It turns out that, if you're not the most senior person in the room, that's perfectly fine, because number one, most good organizations value honest input. They value people trying to, kind of push the search for truth forward. Also, if you're wrong, you kind of very quickly calibrate. If you're smart and capable, you very quickly calibrate. Oh, okay, I was thinking X, but the rest of the team was not thinking X. And, well, you'll learn that next time, and nobody will remember it, and you'll be smarter. The team will be smarter next time around. Now, I think there's something else which people think about, which is like, oh, but what if I get sort of punished? And punished doesn't need to be explicit. It means like, oh, people think I'm a moron, or, I will get called out. Or anything, number of things which could happen, right? I'm kind of challenging authority in some case. And I actually think that's also okay, right? And I'm not saying this in some sort of like moral courage, you have to be righteous. When I post this on LinkedIn, I got a lot of people commenting and being like, yes, go speak truth to power. That is not what I'm saying at all. I think like the reason why it works out is there are two paths which can happen. One is you're in a good organization, right? Like, and in good organizations won't punish you. So if they actually wind up punishing you, great. You're not a good organization. Just leave, right? So it's kind of a fantastic signal that you're not in a healthy place. And by the way, I've actually been in places where I have senses over and over again, and I've left. And so the other case is if you're wrong, like I said, people actually learn from it. You learn from it. So now the other situation is when you're the most senior person in the room. And as I kind of got into when I got a bit older, I found myself in the situations over and over again. It's actually way more important to say the thing which you think people are not saying, because the dynamic is reversed. People are telling you what they think you want to hear, and it's important for you to go, hey, maybe I'm like way off here, but if somebody thinking X, right? And you could be wrong, that's fine. But I think even if you're wrong, it's going to give people a sense of, oh, there are other things that we can come up with. But I don't know, but you've run into this a bunch of times also, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I had a few thoughts on this, right? One, on the surface, I think fully agree with the sentiment of like saying the unsaid, right? Like, if anything, I think in our careers, we've often done that almost too much. So it kind of like it actually hurts me to not speak the truth that I have in my head, like whether, whatever I believe in, I have to go say it. But here is a few places where it hasn't worked out, or places where, I want to think about considerations, right? One is, you talked about this boss or this manager who has got this like terrible temper, or generally does not is like not really such a pleasant person to deal with. People are generally afraid of, speaking truth to people, like if you're not going to be reciprocative of feedback, whatever that may be, you're just not going to attract the most honest opinions. And I think if you are that manager, it is on you to create a culture where people can debate and argue. Like, the decision is yours, but people should be able to talk freely about what they're thinking. And, as we become, like, as we've grown up in our ranks and careers and stuff, that's something that I keep in mind, right? Like, you really have to, like, make it an open culture where people can actually disagree with each other, and that's okay. Like, you should talk about it, because the worst thing to do, especially in, like, a remote first culture, is everyone's, like, says the right thing on Zoom or doesn't say anything at all, and then hangs up, and then one-on-ones, you're hearing, oh my God, why did they say that? Like, that was so, like, and you just don't want that. The other thing is, I do think about, like, when I was much younger, I do think about repercussions. Like, it's very easy theoretically to be like, just say the thing, move on kind of thing. And it's like, no, we've all met that, like, one manager who basically, at like the performance review times, like, kind of takes it on themselves to not promote this person, or is just like goes out of their way to be a bit rude. And, or will, like, even
we're
worse,
smiling here because we both know who Aarthi and I are thinking about individually in our respective career journeys.
And also, like, the worst thing to do is to, like, they will go complain to your manager, like their peers or something, to be like, oh, this person's such a pain. And you don't know how to deal with that, especially if you're, like, much more junior. I think it's very easy to be like, just stand up and leave. But you can't just leave jobs. That's not a thing. We'll have to create a path out and, like, start, like, looking, or maybe move teams or do something of that sort. But it's not often so easy to just be like, I quit, I'm done, you're an idiot, and just go.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think about that. The other thing I think about is, I've been in, like, cultures, whether it's big companies or even small startups, where the boss or the manager is just encourages this, like, culture where everybody around them become more and more sycophantic.
Yes.
Like, they're always like, yes, of course, yeah, whatever you say, amazing. And it's almost like grating. You know that everyone's wrong. You know that this person's wrong. And it's all this, like, emperor's new clothes over and over again, where everyone just is so afraid to say the thing that is the most, it's not even like some hidden metric or whatever. It's like this very obvious thing that is wrong. And oftentimes it's again on that CEO or on that person to be like, everyone's agreeing with me. What is going on? And just, like, pulse check around and make sure that they're not setting this, like, crazy culture where no one ever speaks up.
Yes, I think I have this phrase, courtiers in the land of a king is what I would call it. That phenomenon is very true. And I think that happens quite often. I think one thing I've seen leaders often do is kind of bias to the other side. I saw this especially at one of my, my first couple of years when I was at Twitter, where you'd have a lot of people, you have a lot of discussion. But since no one really wanted to make a decision, you kind of left the room being like, okay, a lot of people have different opinions. And I wish I knew this technique, which I now know, an employee. And this comes from Toby of Shopify, right? And Toby of Shopify had this thing where he goes into this meeting and he says, we can come out with any decision we want, right? But the one thing we cannot do is come out of this meeting with the status quo. And so it's kind of this amazing forcing function to make people pick a decision. And because I will tell you, and I think you might agree, empirically in our careers, every single meeting where somebody has gone, let's get more data before we make a decision, the data was not necessary. You knew what we had to do. And nobody just somebody didn't want to hurt their feelings or whatever. And, the follow-up meeting, folks, listen to me. If somebody's suggesting a follow-up meeting, send them to this episode. We're like, you don't need that follow-up meeting. You know everything you need to know to make that call, right? Whatever it is. But the follow-up meetings usually because you don't want to overrule somebody in the meeting and hurt their feelings, which I understand. But so I think that Toby's framing of you have to make a decision, which is not the status quo, forces you into like a bias towards action. But this is a fascinating topic. There's a lot to unpack there. Fear of repercussions, the space to be intellectually honest. There's lots to unpack. There's kind of so send me more thoughts and comments. I think we might come back to this in future episodes as well.
I think for us, like the big takeaway for me reading your tweet at least was, one, if you're like junior, when I say junior, it's like you've just started out in your career, or you're just about growing up the ranks. Oftentimes it's hard for you to like say the thing or say the unsaid thing, but weigh the consequences, and you might actually come out better off by speaking the truth or saying the thing that is not being said. Because if the culture is good and the manager is like more, if it's like a really good place to be, oftentimes people will appreciate it and you will come out ahead. And if nothing else, you will feel good about yourself because you're not just keeping it all to yourself.
Yes, which is great. I mean, we're going to make you happier, right?
It'll make you happier. Yeah. And then especially if you're like future, you want to be your own, you want to be a founder, you want to be your own boss. This kind of culture sets you up for that because you want to be out there just saying the thing that you believe in and not having to like hedge both ways and do stuff like that. So that's kind of like what I would say if you're like much more younger in your career. And if you're the senior manager or the boss or the CEO or whoever, really think about what culture you're setting up and look around the room every time you have one of these like decision-making meetings or a product roadmap review or one of these, where are you really letting people, especially the folks who have just joined, the folks who are like new to the company, are you shutting them out? Are you encouraging their opinions? Because oftentimes the best ideas come from people who have just come in, who are not in the system too much. So how do you actively have this culture of like getting people to debate, but also knowing that the final decision is yours. Like you need to own the decision.
Multiple great CEOs I think are very good at this. Daniel Ek, who's a friend. And by the way, Daniel, if you're watching, Spotify is the best podcast platform to consume this show on. It'll make you better looking, give you abs, and make you very attractive. But you are not paid by Spotify. But, I think Mark Andreessen does a lot where he speaks the last. He's usually the last person to speak in a meeting because you don't want to bias a conversation. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Okay, I want to get to the next item on our docket. And this has been something that people have asked us for a long time. And I think it's always people in a certain stage in their lives. And we kind of hesitated to kind of talk about it because, I don't know, we felt like sometimes we kind of wanted to be private. Sometimes we didn't feel like we had enough like advice for people. And the topic is, how do you manage your kids and basically your work life, I would say, right? How do you juggle the two? How do you spend your time? And I don't know about you, but this is probably the most asked question that we get. It's kind of obvious. I get it. We're a couple, we have kids. And the reason I think we always kind of hesitate to talk about this until today is that we're like, well, we're kind of figuring it out. And, and it changes so quickly when you have young kids because, the kids change so dramatically and quickly. And so we never felt the time was right. But I realized that I'm curious to get how we feel. I feel like, well, even the little that we have, it's super helpful. It could be super helpful to people because when we talk about it in private, people find it very helpful. So I think we should do it now. So I don't know, but what do you think about the whole topic?
Yeah. Again, this is a super personal topic, kind of timely for us right now too, because we just moved everyone over to a different country, different city, and just started over, like reset everything. We get this a lot. I get this a lot, particularly from like other new moms, other couples. How do you manage both your kids' lives and making sure that you are a good parent to them and a successful career like work, and then all the extra stuff that we do like podcasts and networking and all that other stuff. Like how do you manage all of it? I get this a lot, almost to a point where I almost wanted to like start a series around this. Like I think I can speak for both of us where we both are kind of the personality type that we do not want to give up our careers, right? Like we really like working hard, doing what we do. We like building things. And our entire lives, this was a dream to come here and like do all of this. And so it's not something that we're willing to go trade off in any possible way. Like, I don't want to, and this might not be the same for everybody who's listening here. You might have a different equation on what's success for you, that kind of thing. So for us, our careers and our work life is important. And that's like, it's one of those like foundational frameworks for us. The other thing, our kids are very young. They are 1 and 4. It's tough, right? And we want to make sure that we are good parents to them in the sense we spend a lot of time with them. We are able to do, like quantifiably as many like breakfasts and dinners with them, put them to bed. For me, it's like cooking for them, like that kind of thing. So making sure that we are actually spending quality time with them, kind of thing. And that's not negotiable either. And then, we do travel. We travel with the kids. We travel by ourselves. We have to go figure out all of that. And, it's, especially our first kid was born in 2019, 2020 was COVID, but 2019 we traveled so much, going to India many times, all of that. And so we had to go, we were kind of this pressure tested mode of like figuring it out with the first kid, that when we had the second kid, it kind of got a little bit easier. So I'm saying all of this because our lives and our framework might not be the same as what you want and what you're thinking. But for us, and when we get people reaching out, especially the people who typically reach out to us are, hey, me and my husband or me and my wife, we have a small kid, or we have 2 small children. We work at tech jobs. We work long hours. I don't know how you do this. It's been very hard. We don't know how to have quality time with the kids and also focus on our careers and do traveling. How do you manage that? That kind of thing. That's typically who we get reached out to. But this is not to say you can't have other permutations of this. We've seen,
Yep.
Stay-at-home parents who've like figured this out, and it's really hard for them to, and so on and so forth. So not to negate out everybody
Yeah, I think
else.
that's an important point. I would say just as sort of a little bit of a preamble. This topic is tricky because there are a few things. One is this is intensely personal and everyone makes different life choices. So think of this as kind of
Yeah.
choices we have made, and we obviously
Yeah.
evolving and we learn and change every year. Second is we have a certain age group of kids. So we will with either, infants in, we're a little bit of a toddler now and, young kid. And there are people, older kids, this wouldn't apply. And obviously as our kids age up and we age up with them, our opinions will change. And maybe finally, we have access to resources that a lot of people may not have or may not choose to
Yeah.
utilize. And that changes dynamics. So even with all those parameters, I think it's useful to talk about, what we do. So I think maybe let's kind of attack this topic by topic, which is what is like a typical week look like, for you, for us with our 4-year-old? Like, let's say in San Francisco, because I think maybe our London life is still like evolving.
Yeah, London life is still, we're only like a few weeks in, it's still in flux.
Our
We
British
haven't
accent
quite
is still
figured
work
out.
in progress.
Although I did hear our daughter say tomato the other day, and it blew me away. I'm like, you're a couple weeks in, how do you have an
I know, and
accent?
she's like, "What is
Um,
Spanish?" And I say "brilliant" at
Spanish,
the end
I
of
know.
every sentence. We're getting there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're getting
yeah.
there.
And
So
by
San
the way, I just want to say,
Francisco,
for those of you who get mad at my accent, right? Like, I'm like, hey, I have no control over it, right? But thank you for the comments. Go on. I'm very sensitive.
okay, San Francisco, if we're still living there, what's a typical week like? We'll start the week from Sunday, right? Sunday is like both really busy because it's a time that we actively just spend with the kids. We don't do dinners, we don't go out. It's like the time when I think Sriram will take one of the kids out, get breakfast with the
Yeah.
kids, and do like, he has his own like alone time with one of the kids. And I'll do something similar with the second kid. We kind of prep, like all afternoon, evening is basically just prep for the week. And we figure out everything from what do we need to do? Are we going to travel this week? If I'm traveling, then I make sure that we have everything set up for the children, everything from like food, all of that stuff put together. And then work, Mondays are always really busy. So Sunday is when we like catch up, and I get as close to inbox zero. Shriram actually gets to inbox zero. He's always at inbox zero. It's kind of bizarre. He's always doing email. So you can test this. If you send Shriram an email, he will reply pretty near instantly. It's kind of insane how he does it.
I don't know what
Wow.
okay, let's keep. I like that people think that. Let's keep. Yeah, let's keep it rolling. Let's keep it rolling.
I've seen your inbox, Sriram. It's
No,
insane.
I have
I
a lot
don't
of
know. I don't even
inboxes.
know.
Okay, people reach
It's
out to
true.
me through all sorts of means, like sliding in my DMs about Taylor Swift. So there we go.
Yeah, so Sunday is all about like just prep work. And I really need that because I don't like getting into Monday feeling rushed or feeling unprepared. I'm also a bit of a control freak that way. So there is a lot of that. And look, the other thing that this is the thing that when it comes to like financial status and wealth and that kind of thing, we have nannies.
Yep.
We have people who can help us, right? And in San Francisco, Monday to Friday, we had a full time nanny who would just come in, and full time is basically morning to evening, and she would really help us. Like there were days when I would spend more time talking to her and working with her than with Sriram. And so it was very helpful to have that, especially if you have multiple kids and one has to go after preschool and the other stays at home or has to go to some story time class or whatever, and you kind of have to like juggle schedules and figure it out. And so I would do all the food prep and everything Sunday. Monday morning when she comes in, I would tell her this is what is there, blah, blah, blah. Breakfast, I'm always around for the kids. If I'm doing calls, which is like pre 8 a.m. kind of calls, then I would try and do it video off. Mostly because I still want to like make sure that I'm around with the kids as much as possible. Even if I'm doing a phone call, at least they know that I'm around
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
them. Very rarely I would have to just like go off, lock myself in my room to just do like very,
But
very
it's
early
hilarious
morning
sight to
call.
Aarti to be surrounded by like like a 3-year-old girl's toys in bed and be on a very serious Zoom meeting, which is
I
like
know there's like a big giraffe
yes.
stuffed toy
Sends a message like
looming
don't
over
mess
the
with me, the giraffe
corner.
will come get you. I think you're saying something interesting, which is and folks with kids will know this so well. Which is the only way you can survive with kids is you have a routine, right? And I
Yeah.
think we try very hard to stay to the routine as much as possible. Mostly for the kids' sake,
Yeah.
I think it gives them an anchor. It gives them something to look forward to, and I think it's just really important. And we try and stay involved in much of the element. And I think the core elements of routine are Saturday and Sunday. Parents are at home. We are not working
Yeah.
mostly. Some things do come up, but we're not working, and then we can hang out with them. When we had just one kid, we could both hang out with our daughter. When we had two kids, we did man-to-man defense, where we kind of both switched, and we would do different things with our kids when possible. We would also be very careful about like Saturdays, Sundays when possible, trying to allocate time for ourselves. I think it's very important as parents, as a couple, to stay connected, to have time, to schedule time when possible, and we spend money, resources, etc. Make sure like at least even if it's like we have this term called coffee shop time where we can go to a coffee shop, open up our laptops, and watch a podcast or chit chat or whatever it is. But it's I think a very important bonding time. And then during the week, it's sort of the craziness of Monday morning breakfast or the week
Yeah.
breakfast. And I think both of us try and avoid having too many meetings early in the morning. Things do happen, but
Yeah. So I was going to say, if I have to do very early morning meetings, I do it before the kids wake up. So it'll be like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., that kind of thing. I'm willing to do that as a trade off than, have it during the time when they're up and awake, because I really do want to spend the morning, even if it's like 30 minutes to an hour with them.
yeah, that's true.
And so that's something that we try
That's
and
true.
do.
And then in the evening, I would say roughly say 5:30, 5:45 to 6:37. And every family has different bedtimes. That's not the bedtime. That's madness because that is feed the kids, food on the floor, an all hands on deck situation. That's where I think the nanny is also really helpful when she's around in San Francisco. And then when the kids are in bed, then hopefully they're sleeping. And then it's kind of parents' time, and we're kind of watching TV and catching up. But I do think that routine and knowing what days of the week, what are you doing, and that is very important. I think our daughter, who's a bit older, like she's 4, and she kind of understand it. She looks forward to things and recognize things and plan her own things, and also I think honestly it gives us an anchor. I always note like something about Mark Zuckerberg is you must remember this. Like Zuck would always talk about. I don't know which kid, might be his first. One of the Roman generals, emperors that he's named his kids after. But he said like he always makes it a point that him and Priscilla split up duties where he would do bad time with the kids, right? Like so I think these routines, those little things, bedtime routine, story routine, whatever they're super important, and they don't take a lot of
Yeah,
time.
the kids want it too. I think the kids really want that as well. Like the kids kind of push us to have this thing. And for our older kid, especially, she doesn't like surprises. She will tell us like, hey, just tell me what you're going to do tomorrow kind of thing. So if I'm traveling, I tell her, as early as I know so that she can prep for it, like
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But yeah, evening, that hour to hour and a half window is kind of chaotic. If I do calls, and sometimes I do calls during that, I will tell them ahead of time, be like, hey, 30 minutes, I just need to hop on this call. I'll be in this room, but you will hear me, but I'll be back, kind of thing. So set the expectations there. Screen time, we're not great at
Oh
it, to be
gosh,
honest.
this is a controversial topic. If you know the MBA thing was controversial, just wait until we get this
No,
going.
I think we should talk about it, right? Like, I think we used to do 45 minutes a day, every day for our kid, for our older kid, screen time. And then we thought, especially evening for dinner, because we both are tired. We just like, here's a screen, watch something. And it's usually some annoying like Paw Patrol episode or something.
Oh, come on. Paw Patrol is amazing. Well, in doses. They have a new movie which just came out, by the way. It's doing really well. We might have to.
Yeah, so it's usually that. But then we realized that it was really overstimulating her right before bedtime. So now we've cut it down to 3 days a week. And surprisingly, she's fine with it. So 3 days a week, 45 minutes a day, we'll do something. And then Sriram plays video games with her like weekends.
By the way, before I get to video games, I want to say, can we talk about Bluey? Funny you mentioned this. Bluey is such a is such a common cultural touchstone. I heard mentioned on every podcast.
Even for grown-ups, for grown-ups, it's not just for children. I mean, it's one of those kid shows that I don't mind sitting around with my kids and watching. That's because the storyline's beautiful, the music's great. It's just like in 7 minutes they pack so much. So if you haven't seen Bluey,
so those of you who haven't seen it, Bluey is a animated cartoon series done out of Australia. Follows roughly the story of like this family with 2 daughters. Actually, we didn't know the gender, I think, fairly recently. And
you didn't know the gender. You're always surprised. You'll be like, that's
but that was a funny reference. Like, for example, they never referred to somebody's age until recently. There's a little fourth wall breaking, but I would say it's probably one of the best pieces of TV done in any genre recently. And parents in Bluey know exactly what I'm talking about. People who have not seen it be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how it has become a cultural touchstone, right? Like, and that's I think our daughter watches, both our kids watch some of that. I've been getting my goddaughter in 80s G.I. Joe. Video games has been also a thing. I think I actually think like the routines are as good for the parents as well as it for the kids. And look, I want to be honest, right? I want to break down this routine because I want to tell people what we do, but it also means make a lot of sacrifices. Like, for example, like when somebody, say a founder, pings me at like 5 p.m. and say, hey, do you want to grab a drink today at 7:30? I'm like, I know for a fact you don't have kids because you would not ask that, if you had a kid, unless it's an emergency or something, which is always understandable. But, there is no parent who casually on the day off goes like, let's go out for a drink at 7:30. That's like peak mad kid time.
But I will say, okay, so a couple things because of our structure and routine that we do is we actually host a lot of founders at home, right? And we do dinners with them. But what we'll do is it'll be like a Thursday or a Friday or something like that. And we would ask them to come at 8, something like that. So that, the first kid is in bed and asleep, or the youngest one. And then the second one, our daughter, for her, she would like stay up for 10 minutes or so. And we'll have these people come home and they'll hang out with her for like the first 10, 15 minutes. I think part of why we do that is one, we like hosting founders and hosting, folks at home who are like kind of like us. And so we don't want to give that up. And if they're flexible enough to come in at 8 o'clock, why not, right? Like we do it. But 2, for our daughter too, we want her to know that we are people with normal lives who, will meet other people. It's not like we're living in this like isolation where our life revolves around Zoom meetings and kids.
Yeah.
And so it's good for her to see, we have other friends, we have people who'll come home and we do dinners with them. And, early on, she used to be like, they came all this way to eat pizza and then they will leave. And we're like, yeah, sure, but they're also here to talk to us, and we are going to talk to them. And she'll be like, okay, I don't understand, but sure.
Our daughter has been exposed to many typical San Francisco conversations from, various trends in crypto to will AGI kill us all. Quite a good input for a 3-year-old.
No, but I think it's important for kids to know that this is what the parents do, and these are who the parents work with or talk to, that kind of thing, because you kind of think you're protecting them a little bit by not exposing them, but really, the sooner they're like a part of this whole thing, the better it is for both sides.
I think
so we do that.
One bit I want to get into is time is travel with kids. I think one of the things we decided early on was that we are going to try and do all the travel that we wanted to with our then daughter who was and kind of when she was an infant. And I think the first trip we made, which was a month old, and we all kind of like threw ourselves into, I think with the grandparents we might have been there, and then we flew to Seattle. You do a lot of the sort of the planning and preparation around travel. My take on travel with kids is very much a muscle, where if you haven't done it, it's daunting, and it becomes more daunting over time. And there are definitely periods when it's really hard because, post them staying in just the car seat, but pre them watching a screen during the flight, there's definitely like the very awkward phases. But I think the more you do it, like it's a muscle, you get better at it, and it's just so amazing for them. They get used to it, you get used to it, and you can kind of live the life that you always had with the kids also.
Exactly. I think I've often seen new parents who like kind of save up the travel with the kids for a while. They'll be like, oh, when it gets easier, I'm like, it's not going to get easier. You're going to have to just do it. And you will get better at it. Your kids will get used to it. Don't worry so much about that like flight. Start with a short distance flight, like an hour or 2 hours out, and then you can slowly build muscle as you go longer and longer distances. I think for us, for our first kid, Indra, we did this. We had to go to India, and to plan for that, like India trip was like when she was going to be 5 months old. So at 6 weeks, we took her to a trip to Seattle from San Francisco, which is fairly short, and then we did a trip to New York, and then we did a trip to Europe because we had to do some work travel came up. That was like month 3 or month 4. And then we did this trip to India. So by then, the 24-hour trip didn't feel as daunting because we'd done this a few times. And, I mean, every parent who's been through this knows the whole deal with airports and strollers and foldable strollers. And I can give you like all the advice on what to
And
get.
you have a list kind of list of airlines and airports which are kid-friendly or not. And for those of you on the West Coast who are flying to India, which is maybe a lot of, it's a very specific audience, you got to fly to Dubai. Because of all the airlines and the airports, they are probably the most kid-friendly. And you start judging. You figure out very quickly which airline, which airports are very kid friendly and which are not. But
also like have the right tools in your toolkit. Like get the right things. Some of these you'd be surprised because people don't talk about it on like the kind of car seats you get or strollers you get, and what you can put in the seat and what you can put on top on the stowaway and that kind of thing. And so you just have to like know what everyone else is doing and kind of get informed a bit. And just build that muscle. Like, sure, you're worried about other passengers being annoyed by your kid crying or whatever, but it'll be fine. Trust me. Like, you'll get through this. They'll get through this. It's not that long. And even as harrowing as it can seem during that time, you'll come out of this just being like a lot more resilient about future travel. And so the only tip I have for you is like travel with your children. Don't save it up for some other time down the road, because the older it's never going to get easier. And the more you do it, they're going to get used to it and they're going to feel like this is a normal thing to do.
It is a muscle.
For folks who don't have kids, I'm sorry that we took half the episode just talking about handling work and kids, but this is important. Like we get a lot of people just reaching out about this. And, it's not
we
just
used to be a little sort of like shy about touching these topics. We'd be like, well, a lot of people have different choices. But then it is, well, more power to you. But I think for people who kind of made the same choices, we have, maybe there's something you can take away from this, which is helpful. Obviously, knowing that everyone is, obviously going to go down their own path. Before that, I have something which we did not prepare for, Aarthi. Just, okay. This was one of the most requested topics in my Instagram DMs by a lot of people who slid in, which is, what are your thoughts on America's new royal couple, aka Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift?
Why? Why are you asking? I'm the least qualified person of all people.
No, you're not. No, you're not. I mean, Taylor, you listen to, the Kelce brothers on the podcast. You may not.
Yeah, I'm a fan. What can I say? I'm a fan.
Do you ship them together? Is it what the young people say? I'm trying to sound cool.
I listen to Taylor Swift. I listen to the Kelce Brothers podcast. I love the Kelce Brothers podcast. I don't follow a lot of football. Every once in a while, when Sriram's watching it, I'll just have my laptop in front and just pretend to watch it. But the podcast is a whole other game, right? Like these people are like, it's amazing to see them not just be the footballers, but being dads, being husband, being like a normal human being, a family person. I think it's tough to have a very busy schedule. Do these like workouts all the time, be super fit, really think about like what you're eating and all of that, and then do this like very human podcast where it makes you so relatable. So I love the podcast. It makes me feel like I know them. And then, I like Taylor Swift. I'm a Swiftie. I love Taylor Swift.
I love it.
And I love her music. And so, yeah, I'm happy for them. We'll see how it goes. I'm happy for them.
Well, yes, I think, first of all, the podcast, as you Aarthi pointed out, is amazing. And so the New Heights podcast, which I think as we speak is the number one on every podcast listing, is fantastic. In fact, I don't get a chance to watch a lot of the Chiefs games or the Eagles games, but Travis and his brother Jason, I think one of the trick to that podcast is that they're so likable. And even if you don't follow football, you just have a lot of fun watching them and seeing how they deal with their, kind of their profession, but also their family. And it's great. I actually think the podcast leads a little bit into the relationship because I think without a podcast, I don't think you'd actually get a sense of the family as much. Travis, his brother, maybe America's favorite mom at the moment, their mom, Donna. But they also kind of got to do the whole storyline through the podcast as well, right? Like they kind of made fun of some of the rumors. And then I think about 40 minutes into the last week's episode, they got to talk about Travis and Taylor. I'm a fan. I love all the memes of, people like, hey, Taylor's putting Travis on the map on TikTok. Aarthi and I, we wish the couple well. There you go.
I can't believe anybody else would want anything other than that. What's not to like?
Okay. Here's a question I know we did not prepare for. As somebody who's been in a relationship for quite a while, right? What advice do you have for this young couple as they set off on their path of romance?
No. You and I both know we are so bad at this stuff. Like we're
bad at romantic advice for other couples. Yes, we have a very bad track record. All right.
No, we should not even go there. That is not a pivot for this show that is going to go well.
You never know. Well, Travis, Taylor, we wish you the best. But I think apart from that, their podcast, Travis and Brother New Heights, it's fantastic. The people behind it, Wave and Brian, they're all fantastic. Great team behind them. Hugely recommend it.
Whoever follows Sriram on IG, stop sending him stuff like this because you're just encouraging this man. Like, don't do it.
It's great.
It's not healthy.
It's great. There's only so much NBA hate you can get. This is fantastic. All right. This is great. Look, if you have thoughts, questions, please slide into my DMs.
Or other topics.
Yes.
Yeah, we get inspiration from your comments and your topics. One, leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify because that's the one place people can discover us. And then two, leave us comments on what you would like us to go cover next. And, we read every one of them. We try to reply to every one of them. So we really appreciate it. So if there are things that you would like us to go cover, tell us.
Awesome. Well, this is a blast. Until next week. Peace out.
See you.